In the previous video, I showed you how to set up a server and Deluge so that you can access the Deluge server remotely using either the client or the web interface as demonstrated here. What we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you how to be able to access the Deluge server remotely over the internet without having to be on your local network. This way you can start torrents from at school, at work, or mobile, pretty much anywhere where you have internet access. To start, there's a few things we need to determine. First is, what is the IP address of your router? So what we're going to do is we're going to click on Start, type in CMD, and hit Enter to launch a command prompt. What we're going to do in this command prompt is type in ipconfig, and this is going to display all the information about your network connection. We're going to scroll until we find the Ethernet adapter, and we're going to check out what our IP address and the default gateway is the most important part. This is the IP address of your router on your local network. Now we're also going to have to make sure that your server has a static IP address. We don't want this address changing. So if you go into your server and go into the Network and Sharing Center and click on your local area connection, then Properties, select Internet Protocol IPv4, and then Properties again. This will display all of your IP information. By default, Windows actually obtains this information automatically. We want to set it statically to ensure that your address isn't changing. You do want to set your address to an address that is out of range, that won't be assigned automatically to another computer. Generally, an address above 200 is safe, but you don't want to go over 254. For the subnet mask, default gateway, and DNS servers, you can just use the same information that you saw in the command prompt earlier when you ran the ipconfig command. Because you'll be on the same subnet and the same gateway as you were previously. You just want to make sure that IP address isn't changing. After changing the IP address, you do want to make sure your internet is still working. You can go ahead and launch a browser. Just make sure the internet's still working, that you didn't accidentally choose an invalid address. Now we're actually going to log into your router and set up the port forwarding. So open a browser and then type your default gateway address into the address bar. In my case, it was 192.168.0.200. So I entered that into the address bar, hit enter. You're going to see a logon prompt of some kind or a welcome page. You may have to look up what your username and password is for your particular model of router. If you do have your router provided to you by your ISP, there's likely a sticker on it that'll actually tell you this information. My router is a DDWRT router. In this particular model, you click on the NAT/QoS option and then to port forwarding. Yours might be under firewall or some other sort of security related heading, because you are actually manipulating the firewall when you're doing port forwarding. In the port forwarding section of your router, you will see something similar to what I have on the screen here, where you can enter rules. In my case, instead of calling them rules, they're called applications. So you'd list the name of the rule or the application, choose the appropriate protocol, as well as the starting and finishing port. The ones that we're looking at here, though, specific to Deluge, are Deluge and Deluge Client. That's why I called them on my list here, and you can see how the ports correspond to the ports that we had set up earlier. You'll also need to enter the IP address of the destination computer. In this case, it's the static IP address that we set on the server. The next thing we are going to do is we're going to test to make sure the port forwarding is working correctly. Make sure you always save or apply any changes in the router after entering them in the port forwarding table. So a quick and easy way to test if the port forwarding is working is to open a browser or a new tab and search for Open Port Checker. The first hit on Google here, you can actually enter a port number, and this will test your port forwarding. So as you can see there, I check 8112 and it is showing that it is open. That means my port forwarding is working correctly. If it tells you that it's closed, there can be a number of reasons, but really it's either you entered the port forwarding rule incorrectly, or you may need to add exceptions to the firewall. If anything blocks that connection at all, it's not going to show up as open. It does have to actually accept the connection to show open. On this page, it also shows your IP address. This isn't the same IP address we saw earlier in the command prompt. That's your local IP address. The IP address on this website is actually your external or outside IP address, and it's the address you're going to be using when connecting to Deluge or to the Deluge web interface from another computer across the internet. So be sure to note that IP address, and this IP address may actually change, so you may have to check it occasionally if you have any issues connecting to your server. Another popular website to find your IP address is whatismyip.com, or you could also use this Open Port Checker one. There's a number of sites available that'll tell you what your external address is. If you find that your IP address is changing often, you may want to sign up for a DDNS service such as noip.org or something like that. They're quite cheap, and what it will do is allow you to assign a more friendly name instead of an IP address to your connection, and when that address changes, you'll have a little app on your computer that'll update that domain name, so you won't have to update it manually. The best way to test this and make sure it's actually working would be to do this test externally, but you can actually do it internally as well. If you copy your external IP address, paste it into the browser, and add the appropriate port number, 8112, you should be able to connect to the Deluge web interface using that IP address. If you can't, then that's going to indicate there is an issue with the port forwarding or the address. So from this interface, you can start torrents, pause torrents, remove it. You can do pretty much everything from this, and it should work the same remotely as it does locally. That should do it. If you followed the instructions up to this point, everything should be working for you. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, favorite, share, do whatever you do, and happy downloading.